For about the past 20 years, we've been attending San Diego Comic-Con, one of the largest conventions in the US, first as attendees and later as professionals. This year, however, we went in for the first time as exhibitors. We were SRCC press at M11 and small press, by the way. As I had thought, this did warp how we approached the convention, but not as wildly as I had assumed. Here's how that went. Last year, we had applied for small press at SDCC, but they didn't tell us until about a month out that they had an open spot for us. At the time, we turned them down due to our inexperience. This year, however, they approved us within an even shorter preparation window, about 3 weeks. Although we only had 2 other large conventions under our belt, we took the offer because we didn't know if they'd ever give it to us again if we rejected them a second time. Now, this did mean that through a unique interaction with the badge system, we would have both professional and exhibitor badges. Since we didn't know exactly what that would mean for us, we didn't commit to the exclusives portal, but I did get far enough to properly show you why you should always read the TOS before you commit your points. Not all of us like reading, but in this case, it could save your life, or at least your time. Also, CCI, please let people refund multiple points at once. Doing it one at a time is so tedious. To our collective surprise, this was the first year we had looked at everything and thought, wow, I don't care. For the record, we still cared, but didn't find as much of interest as previous years. This, however, did line up perfectly with our focus on tabling, so we considered this a harmonic convergence. For the first time, we went down to San Diego on Tuesday so we could set up our table early. During the drive down, we heard the shocking news that Ozzy Osbourne had died, which reminded us of the time we walked past him at Comic-Con just 3 years ago. As a sort of tribute, we listened to Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius XM during the trip, which played a continuous tribute through both his music and stories from fans who called in. Down to the convention center, they were strict about taking photos during booth setups, so I don't have any footage of us getting to our table, and I couldn't grab footage of the rather ominous giant Pokeball until much later. I can, however, show you that we turned this into this. This is also when we discovered how much SDCC cares about what badges you have, as we needed to pick up our exhibitor badges, and Trevor was the only one who didn't get his professional badge in the mail. As we went through the process, we figured out that the staff didn't really care about us having exhibitor and professional badges simultaneously, as they said nothing when they saw us wear both. We even still got bags and pins, but we still wanted to be careful. Dad also got the exhibitor professional badge type, which they don't advertise, and we interpret as granting you the powers of both an exhibitor and a professional, although we didn't confirm. Of course, with great power comes great responsibility, so we laid down some ground rules for our increased power. We resolved that we would only use the professional badge to enter professional-only spaces like the Pro Lounge, as Don One mentioned in his last appearance on our podcast.
But you guys also have your pro badges, right? So you could just switch it out.
Yeah, is that okay to do?
Yeah, it's solid. They don't care.
We also followed a big rule with exhibitor. If you line up before the floor open announcement, Comic-Con gets upset. If you go after the announcement, however, it's fair game. Since we were in San Diego already, we actually ate dinner in the gas lamp for once outside of our usual Wednesday spot. So far, so good. As with Tuesday, we took some time during the day to look around San Diego on Wednesday. Since we had time, we stopped by the Pac-Man Cafe. We only had to wait about 20 minutes to get in, though it felt longer, and we were one of the first people inside. It was pretty cool like the Sonic Cafe, though we felt less compelled to eat there and instead walked away with a pin set. We did eat across the street, and I found out that I like Reubens. Now, if you remember, we weren't allowed to take pictures inside during setup. However, they didn't say anything about the outside. So behold, some footage of the activations behind the convention center. As you can see, they were coming along swimmingly. My phone didn't cooperate when I tried taking a picture of this, but I also confirmed that there was, indeed, no Dragon Ball activation at the Marriott this time. Probably because Bandai was focused on promoting the Gundam TCG. One of our last acts was grabbing some SDCC merch while the room didn't have very many people. It was around this point that I confirmed from showing and flipping badges multiple times in front of staff and security that if you have both a professional and exhibitor badge, they don't really care. Like, at all. This continued throughout the convention, as Dad wore both of his badges all the time, and I wore both of mine in the same holder with no consequences, despite what they may imply on the website. I still don't know if it was specific to our badge interaction though, so just be careful in case security decides to randomly care if you have an attendee badge. After filling in a bit of time, we split up. Dad and I set up the booth and walked the floor for a bit to scout things out, including info and prices. This kind of thing really helped us make some important scheduling and spending decisions. Okay, so you know how I mentioned you're not supposed to form lines before the floor opens? Well, some exhibitors don't necessarily follow the rule. Case in point, we witnessed a line forming for the nearby Peanuts booth consisting of both exhibitors and attendees with temporary setup stickers. If you've ever sworn you were the first person on the floor but still saw a capped line, this is why. Fortunately, security noticed the line and alerted a staff member who successfully dispersed the line, although naturally reformed in the small window between floor open and people actually getting down to the floor. This is a consistent problem with the Peanuts booth, not helped by the fact that they more or less encouraged it. Each morning, we would see security and and staff yell at and break up lines, especially the Peanuts line, which they once tried to break up just too late, and I overheard them grumble about exhibitor badges pulling that sort of stunt as though it happened all the time. This is why we try to follow the rules as best we can. Once the floor opened for the night, we still did our usual divide and conquer, with 2 of us manning the booth and the other 2 getting as many exclusives and signatures as we could out of the way to free up more of our schedules. We mostly succeeded here and got plenty of stuff, some of which I covered in the haul video. On the opposite side of the booth, it was slow going due to the initial rush of people focused more on nabbing exclusives or hitting familiar booths. Things picked up when we got a plush from Belzy that we used to help illustrate Mocha, the Kitsune in our comic book Power Squared. Overall, we got a couple email signups, made 1 sale, and a couple people tried our Sword in the Stone challenge, where you would receive a special The Blade of Miracle sketch card if you pulled the sword out within 90 seconds. Not a bad start, especially compared with our last 2 cons. Afterwards, we felt hopeful that we might finally be doing something right. On Thursday, Dad and I spent a good amount of time at the booth. Past the initial wave of people, we concluded that apart from relative inexperience at conventions, we made slow progress because our booth neighbor blocked us, both literally from view and effectively because they were so good at drawing attention that the crowds that formed in front prevented other people from accessing us. We feel like we keep getting screwed by booth placement, though I just think it's bad luck. Then again, it didn't help that we were confirmed so late that we didn't even show up in the printed quick guide, so people had to just stumble upon us. I did get a break at some point during the day and spent over an hour wandering through the exhibit hall with crowds since I didn't have enough time early in the morning. Among the interesting things I saw, I also found the Beast Labs booth, which got a more crowded spot this time and didn't pass up the opportunity to get some algorithm-friendly footage. The biggest highlight of the night came in the afternoon. For the 20 years that I had attended SDCC, technically 19, I had never been to Hall H, the holy grail of panel rooms. Even people who have never been to SDCC have heard of Hall H and people camping out to get it. I blame Twilight. I've even put Hall H panels in the schedule, but under the assumption that I'd never get in because it's always sounded so difficult. This year, I wanted to get into the Hall H panel for Five Nights at Freddy's 2, because I've been hyped for the movie since I saw the original. Over the years, I eventually got the impression you could theoretically just walk in, so I decided this time I would actually give it a shot, which started with asking a staff member where the Today line was. This is very important. Since I was actually successful in my endeavor, I thought I'd give a quick guide to help demystify the process. To get to the Today line, go to the back of the convention center, making a right before you would cross the street to the Hilton. Eventually, on the grass, you'll see someone holding a Hall H sign. Approach them. Past that person to the right is a green flag where you'll go through a bag check, notably the only one in the con. They'll want to check every zipper and ask you to empty your pockets. Beyond that, you'll enter the tents and just wait. That's it. Really. After a while, I entered the door and finally got to experience the glory of a Hall H panel. The room is huge and not only has several screens just to make sure everyone can see it, but even has its own bathroom. I don't know much of anything else at the rules, except they don't want you circling the room or standing too long for safety reasons. It was so easy for me to get in, Trevor came over to join me, so I took a seat and waited for him. In the panel itself, we learned a lot of behind-the-scenes info from a few of the actors and producers, including Jason Blum's philosophy that you should wait to see how successful a movie is before you think about sequels, or else the first will suffer. Matthew Lillard couldn't show up, but they did share a pre-recorded message from him greeting Hall H attendees, expressing his gratitude and excitement about the possibility of adapting FNAF 3, if enough people watch FNAF 2, and introducing fellow Scream alumni Skeet Ulrich to the cast. They showed us all a trailer for FNAF 2 and an atmospheric clip from the film. No jump scare, thankfully. Plus, Josh Hutcherson confirmed Mangle as one of the film's animatronics, so I'm curious how they'll pull that off. As a side note, I quickly learned while watching the Spinal Tap 2 trailer during the previous panel that the pre-recorded footage is kinda loud, so it was a good thing I brought ear protection. Since we wanted to eat somewhere that would close earlier than we would like, we closed up shop on the floor about an hour early, but only after Trevor and I redeemed a giveaway ticket we got during the Hall H panel, which gave us this. By the way, I know why the giveaway prizes are at the Hyatt, because there's no room in the convention center otherwise, but I really wish you didn't have to hike 2 hotels over. On Friday, Dad and I took some time to look around the floor before it opened. We went to the Lego booth and saw other people taking pictures without issue, so behold, the most impressive Lego diorama you'll ever see. Once the floor opened, the day was largely uneventful. Just like WonderCon, however, we actually had a repeat customer. This time, they bought the first 5 single issues, read 2 off-screen, then later came back and bought the entire run of Power Squared. This told us that people who read the book generally seem to like it, it's just that we've had a hard time with the getting people to read it part. Later, Trevor and I attempted to to get into a panel for The Amazing Digital Circus. It was actually pretty easy because we got into the previous panel, a conversation about world building with Ronald D. Moore, who didn't have as much demand but still mostly filled the room. To our surprise, although we went in knowing next to nothing about him, we walked away wanting to watch For All Mankind and felt more confident in him helming the live-action God of War adaptation, for which he announced the writing team, thanks to his insane dedication to working out every last detail of a setting. This is why waiting in another panel isn't the worst thing, as you get to find out about things you may not have cared about otherwise, like how we got interested in Watchmen, pre-movie, while waiting for a panel about Tight Kubo. As for the Tad C panel, it was pretty cool. We learned a lot about the show's production from some of the voice cast and Gooseworks, like how Alex Rokon, hopefully I didn't butcher that name, got approached for the role of Kane because of a Deltarune Chapter 2 fan dub he did of Spamton. He still had to audition and was nervous because he was the reference for the character. They also showed off a new Good Smile figure for Pomni as part of the Figma line, and a sneak peek at the next episode. Plus, we walked away with a card of some original concept sketches from Gooseworks signed by one of the voice actors, in our case, Alex Rokon. As much as we had fun, however, I will note that the crowd was pretty rowdy. Yeah, it was a bunch of fellow fans having fun, but it was amazing to me that the Hall H panel for a movie about killer animatronics possessed by the souls of dead children was somehow more civil than the panel for an internet show about characters living an existential nightmare. I just had flashbacks to my brony days and felt glad that I remembered to bring ear protection. Once that was over and we finished our time at the table, we ended the day feeling a bit more confident about our performance for the remaining days. Saturday turned out more eventful for us. I managed to get into a Toddland signing for Chris and Shane Houghton, the creators of Big City Greens. Although I got a signed poster, just meeting them was cooler to me because I have a little bit of history with them. Trevor and I first met them years ago, and they did a signing at a local comic book store for their comic book series, Reed Gunther. For those who don't know, it's a comedic western about a bear-riding cowboy, and we still have the entire run. Soon after, they got involved with the Adventure Time comic, and when we approached them for a drawing on a blank sketch cover, they recognized us even under full cosplay, which we'll never get over. Now, even after all these years, they still remembered me and were very friendly. Near the end of my brief time with them, I invited them onto our podcast, but they'd have to clear with Disney first, so we'll see how that pans out. It would be nice to catch up with them about their careers. Every year, we like to attend at least one of the Cartoon Voices panels, but we thought that manning the table would interfere with that. As such, we split up and had it so two of us would attend one each day. As such, Dad and I went to the room for the first Cartoon Voices panel, which had no line, and sat through what remained of the quick draw panel ahead of it. Both panels were very fun, but the Cartoon Voices panel included a surprise appearance by Mari Shimizu, the original Japanese voice of Astro Boy. Although I don't care much about Astro Boy, I still understood the significance of this appearance and thought myself lucky to have seen it. During this panel, we learned that someone had not only bought the entire run of our other book, The Blade of Miracles, up to that point, but asked Trevor for a sketch. Not only did that sketchbook contain 30 years worth of art from artists before they got big, but Trevor recognized one of the drawings belonged to Sergio Aragonés. He found being in the same sketchbook as Aragonés equal parts an honor and intimidating. Also, this is more of a minor thing, but I helped judge at a Yu-Gi-Oh! Regional in Los Angeles earlier this year and was pleasantly surprised during my final break when I ran into the head judge from that event at the Konami booth. We had a pleasant discussion. He encouraged me to keep judging, which was nice. Otherwise, I ended the day by scouting booths for potential Sunday purchases when discounts are more likely. Sunday was comparatively not as eventful, at least as far as sales went, as we only sold one copy for most of the day. On the upside, we did fill out the entire first page of our newsletter sign up, which was more than we could say for any of our prior appearances. However, I know you want to hear more about the fun stuff. I did get some of the things I had scouted the prior day for, but couldn't find one of the books I had wanted. In exchange for Dad and I doing the Saturday Cartoon Voices, Mom and Trevor went to the Sunday edition, which featured different voice actors. The panel they got into beforehand was the first ever SDCC panel for Amphibia, featuring Matt Brawley. He talked about the show and, apart from shilling Marcy's journal, which I bought, he revealed that Tokyo Pop will release a sequel comic, which I will gladly read. I did learn between panels that there was an Amphibia poster giveaway at Tokyo Pop with the chance of getting one signed by Matt Brawley, but I got bamboozled by a fake line and could only get an unsigned poster. Now, remember something I said last year about missing out on meeting the Bosons? Maybe one day I can meet the Bosons myself and tell them how much I love the series. Well, this year, I felt determined. Udon had 3 ticketed signings at the Bosons, but this required buying $100 of Shantae merch specifically. As someone I overheard asked, is there even $100 worth of crap to buy? While I did throw more money into the Shantae hole, I wasn't going to toss in a $100, so I decided that I would try to get in after the end just to say hi, and calculated that Sunday was my best bet. To my surprise, surprise, Udon was cool with it and let other people like me hang out until the end of the signing, which ended an hour later than scheduled, aka 30 minutes before floor closing. Dad and I did something else while waiting for the line to shrink. When Udon announced the presence of the handful of extras, the Bozons let us come forward, and I finally got to talk to Erin Bozon and tell her how much I loved the Shantae games, as well as why Pirate's Curse is my favorite. For me, it's because it has a great gameplay balance for the most part, and I like how the story required cooperation between Shantae and Risky Boots. She was also impressed that I had played all of the games, most fans I met haven't, and offered me a photo op with them. Truly, the Bozons are some of the nicest creators I've ever met, and they're all grateful and humble in a way that I think other game developers should be. The interaction really helped me end the con on a major high note, and I'm glad I made the effort. While Dad and I got back to the booth, we learned that John Barber, editor-in-chief at PugW and a friendly acquaintance of ours, showed up at our table and bought all of TBOM up to that point, as well as one of Trevor's original sketch cards. On that note, once the floor closed, small press clapped and cheered, and we broke down our setup so we could do the elevator shuffle and finally leave San Diego for another year. Since I shared some tips on navigating SDCC last time, I figured I'd do it again from the perspective of an exhibitor. I can't offer much apart from some standard ones. Make sure you have verticality in your setup, make your table visually appealing, and practice your pitch. However, I can add a big one that gets overlooked, which is that if you table somewhere like Comic-Con that has no carpeting, do yourself a favor and invest in some anti-fatigue mats. We bought a set of cheap half-inch puzzle piece ones from Harbor Freight for like $10, and it still made a huge difference how we felt by the end of the day after hours of standing and sitting. Although we still felt pain in the hotel room, we felt none of the fatigue, and I felt just fine during our recovery day the following Monday. Seriously, don't neglect this. So, tabling at Comic-Con felt much different than just attending, and it came with its own challenges and frustrations, but it felt rewarding. We did better here than we did at LA Comic-Con and WonderCon combined, so I feel a lot more confident now about tabling in the future, and maybe returning to SDCC in that capacity. Of course, unlike other exhibitors, Small Press and RSL have to reapply each year, so it's not a guarantee. Either way, we learned a lot from doing this, and hope to apply that knowledge to future cons. That about does it for this year. If you like this, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, leave a comment down below if you have any opinions of San Diego Comic-Con or how I approached the vlog this time. Bye bye.